We live in a culture of addiction. Think about it, right? We can start with the obvious one. We're all addicted to our smartphones. Every last person. You're almost certainly on one right now. Most of us spend more time on our phones than with our romantic partners. And I know the iPhone is a good looking piece of kit, but that is ridiculous. Linked very strongly to smartphone addiction is social media addiction. There's a couple 100 million people who say they're addicted to TikTok and Instagram. There's probably still somebody out there using Facebook obsessively. God rest its soul. But there's a litany of other areas as well. 1 in 20 American adults misuse prescription drugs within the last 12 months alone. And that's not to mention illegal drugs. There are 100,000 drug overdose deaths a year in the US, 2/3 of them caused by fentanyl. There's addiction to gambling, and we're not just talking casinos, but online sports betting. And I don't know if you heard about this, but there was a shift in laws in 2019 which enabled sports betting revenues to grow by 69% from 2019 to 2020, and then grow by another 270% in the first quarter of 2021.
That's a lot of money.
There's shopping addiction, alcohol addiction, attention addiction, Netflix binge watching, and of course another big one which I can't say directly because it will damage the performance of this video, so I'll use a euphemism: internet corn. Cornography.
It's incredible flavor.
But this is another one where people spend hours a day online viewing explicit content, and for most people it is their primary sexual interaction. And what's incredible about this is that we all know that this stuff is bad for us. I oversee small groups in our church, and I was chatting to a group which is based around the parents of teenagers. And they were saying that their young people recognise that they're addicted to their smartphones and don't want to be addicted to them, but don't know what to do about it. They know it's damaging their lives, they know it's not good for them, but they don't know how to be free. And furthermore, it's not just personally destructive. It's societally destructive. The cumulative effect of all of these addictions is the destruction of Western civilization.
That doesn't sound good.
Clickbait articles designed to get a heightened emotional reaction have destroyed accurate reporting and thoughtful debate. What we need is extreme stories and big reactions to fuel the addiction, because otherwise people will click on something else to get the hit that they need. We are seeing the breakdown of healthy relationships in a way that we have never encountered before. We've got the rise of all sorts of degeneracy, all-time overdose deaths, and the loneliest generation in history. And listen to this. IQ has dropped for the first time in 100 years, and it is dropping among young people because they cannot focus on anything. They cannot listen to anything. They cannot read a book.
Do you think I'm stupid?
And all of these problems come back to the fact that we are addicts. And what's amazing is that the enemies of the West know this. If we think about TikTok, which is functionally run by the Chinese government, it's very different in China. Over there, if you want to go viral, you've got to do something that's like engineering or intellectual or in some way useful.
If you're under 14 years old, they show you science experiments you can do at home, museum exhibits, patriotism videos, and educational videos. And they also limit it to only 40 minutes per day. Now, they don't ship that version of TikTok to the rest of the world.
In the West, the stuff that goes viral is either complete nonsense or incredibly destructive. And they're not just doing this through TikTok. The majority of fentanyl in the US originates in China. They know that the way to defeat the West is to keep us addicted. And quite shrewdly, they will fuel addiction here while shielding their own people from it. But ultimately, we shouldn't stand here and blame them. They are not the primary culprit in this. We are. And the reason that we have this culture of addiction is not because of some other influence. It is because we have, as a society, abandoned the idea of self-control. Many of you probably saw that truly depressing interview with Will Smith and his wife Jada Pinkett Smith, and that portion where she was explaining to him why she cheated on him. And what she said was this:
I just wanted to feel good. It had been so long since I felt good.
And she says it like it's something profound, like it's something deep. It isn't. I just wanted to feel good. Congratulations, darling. You've got the moral wherewithal of a 3-year-old.
That hurt my feelings.
And we can sit here and point the finger at her, but it is exactly why we are a culture of addicts. We just want to feel good, and that drives all of our decisions, and it gets us hooked on things that give us an instant good feeling. There's a book called The Coddling of the American Mind, and one of the things it talks about in there is this loss of self-control that we've experienced as a society. And the authors explain that one of the key causes of this is that we have catastrophized anything that feels bad. People today consider any sort of bad feeling a mental health crisis, as opposed to just a normal human experience. And so we avoid any sort of emotional discomfort, which self-control necessarily entails. In order to have self-control, you have to have a little bit of emotional discomfort. The definition of self-control is to not be driven by your initial emotional reactions.
I'm in a glass case of emotion!
But we don't do that, so we end up with people who do things like this.
My choice! My choice!
They seem lovely. And as a society, rather than in any way attempting to control our emotions, we have allowed our emotions to control us. That is the reason why we have a culture of addiction. Now you're probably sitting there wondering, does Jamie think that the Bible has anything to say about this? Maybe you've never seen one of my videos before and you're not wondering that at all. In which case, haha! Of course I do. I am a Christian. Of course I think the Bible has something to say about this. And this is what it says. One sin we don't hear talked about much today is the sin of gluttony. We have the tendency to assume that when we talk about gluttony, we're just talking about overeating.
Get in my belly!
And sure, it includes that, but it does definitely go beyond that. The opposite of the sin of gluttony is the virtue of temperance, the virtue of self-restraint, the ability to say no to things that you might initially want. And gluttony is the indulging of appetites, I would say whatever those appetites may be, to the point of overconsumption. And do you not think it's interesting that for almost 2,000 years, the church considered this to be one of the 7 deadly sins? In our day, we tend to think, that's nothing. But it's not nothing. It's ruining our lives and it's destroying our culture. The West is collapsing because we can't put down our phones and we can't keep it in our pants. I feel like maybe those guys were right. If we want to break the culture of addiction, here's what we need to do. Some of you may have heard about a famous study where they gave rats heroin. And not just because it sounds hilarious, but also they wanted to find out about addiction. And they found that when they put rats in empty cages, they were very easily addicted. But they found that when they put them in what they called Rat Disneyland, which I think is ironic because Disneyland is run by a mouse. I don't know if that's like a gang rivalry situation or something, but whatever. But when the rats had some purpose to live for, when they had some stimulating environment, they were much less likely to get addicted. And so of course the analogy applies. When humans are put in a good environment, they don't get as addicted as when they're put in a bad one. And that's kind of the secular response to addiction, to which I say, yes, but let's push further. If we stop there, then we can only maintain self-control when our environment is pleasant. And unfortunately, we live in a world which is very often deeply unpleasant. We live in a painful, sad, and difficult world. And the solution to being able to maintain self-control even when things are difficult is to have a purpose, to have a joy that lies beyond this world. The solution is to find your joy in the presence of God, so that even if everything else is gone, you still have Him. The solution is to not simply run after temporary instant gratification, nor is it even lifelong happiness. It is to go after eternal joy. It is when we behold the face of the living God who sets us free that we can finally, willingly, and permanently smash the idols that have held us captive. I hope you enjoyed that video. I would love if you would like and subscribe. Also, the video that I'm going to pop down here blew up recently, so I'd love if you'd check that out if you haven't done so already. And if you'd like to support this channel, I have a Patreon if you want to do so regularly. There's also a PayPal, and at wearecontramundum.com you can get phenomenal Christian apparel. It looks great, the message is great, and it helps keep this channel going. Thanks so much.